Well, thank you all for having me today, and thanks to the Missouri Chamber for inviting me out here. This is the second time that I've been in Missouri this year, once in Columbia back in March, and then today. And I talked about really the same issue back then, and the conclusion, if anyone was there from my remarks in Missouri, in Columbia back in March, were that, look, anything can happen on climate this year, but it's doubtful that they can get a vote through in the Senate. So fast forward 4 months to today, we've got a bill, we had a House vote, it was successful, barely. But at the end of the day, my message is the same, is that anything can happen on climate. If they want to make a deal, you can always make a deal. But if you had to take a vote on it today, it's not passing in the Senate. So I want to start with sort of my take on what happened in the House, and then get into the bill itself for a few minutes, and then talk a little bit about the future. The House vote I thought was very, very interesting. It passed by 219 to 212. They needed 218 votes to get this thing through. And they had, if it was a straight party line vote, they had about 257 votes among the Democrats in the House. So frankly, for most of the year and most of the past couple years, we've just kind of the House was always secondary to us. We thought this thing would sail through the House. But there you go, it didn't. And frankly, had the Republicans done any real whipping amongst their party, it probably would not have passed the House, because they really, they had 8 Republicans cross over and vote for this thing. So, you know, I thought it was a very interesting vote. If you look at the dynamics of it, it actually, most of the states voted against this thing. There was a majority in 28 of the 50 states. There was a majority of the delegations voted against this bill. Yours was one of them. You had a pretty straight party line vote in the state, but you had more Republicans than Democrats in the state. So this is one of the, I was telling Roger beforehand, I'm not much of a history buff, but this is one of the more interesting things where you look back at the founding fathers and say, oh my goodness, this is exactly why they did what they did with our Senate and our House. 26% of the voting weight in the House right now is buoyed more or less by California and New York. And that's why this thing was able to get through. You had significant majorities in California and the densely populated Northeast that were sort of buoying this thing in favor of passage. In the Senate, that shrinks down to about 4%. It shrinks down to exactly 4%. So that's why we are where we are, and why they're really, you know, why they could get a majority in the House, but when the threshold's 60 votes in the Senate to defeat a filibuster, they're still really only in the mid-40s right now. I mean, I think they're probably around 45, 46, depending on how you look at it. Now, that's based on the way that the bill looks right now. Anything can happen. So why did that happen? I mean, why was this such a tough sell amongst the Democrats in particular, who would be the swing votes on this issue? And the real reason is well, there's a lot of reasons, but when you look at the geography of this, you can kind of draw a line after the East Coast and the West Coast. It's really the bulk of the middle of the country is taking a significant hit on this thing, while the coasts don't take as much of a hit from this thing. Now, the other reason is this chart I brought right here. This is our attempt at showing what this bill really would look like if you had to implement it. Now, the way this works is the red dots are formal regulations, which have to go through that giant octagon in the middle. I think that's an octagon. And the entire formal regulatory process. The blue dots are straight mandates that such and such shall do this, such and such shall do that. This is a humongous bill. To give you some context on this, the Lieberman-Warner bill, when it passed out of committee 2 years ago, had about 95 regulations and mandates total in it. When Boxer did her markup of it and introduced her amendment that eventually failed on the floor, that thing had 350, and that was a nasty looking chart to begin with, and we did one then too. And this thing has 1,500. So what I try to explain to people is, this is not just a cap and trade bill. This is cap and trade makes up 400 or 500 pages of the 1,500. It's really cap and trade and a whole lot of other stuff. And the problem with a whole lot of other stuff is that you give people who might be on the fence, a lot of reasons not to like all of that other stuff. And it was just a matter of time before they all read it and found things they didn't like. And there's, I mean, pick your poison. There's all kinds of stuff in there. I mean, ability for, you know, to sort of open up climate change to tort lawsuits, Not necessarily full preemption of the Clean Air Act, so you could still kind of impose Clean Air Act requirements, new source performance standards on small and mid-sized businesses. It doesn't fully preempt state programs, you get parallel programs. I mean, there's dozens of things I could go through if I really wanted to, I think, bore you guys. And then at the end of the day, it's not international, which, you know, I think a lot of the swing votes have that issue. Is what do we do about this? It's global climate change. So here we are. It's probably not going to, if you had to take a vote on it today in the Senate, it's not going to pass. What happens? I always say anything can happen, never say never. The one thing that was very odd to me about the Senate, about the House debate, was that the White House was extraordinarily involved, and in a sense, there was a desperation to get this thing through. And I do feel that if healthcare fails, we could be right back with that, especially if it looks like they can make the deals to get close to 60 votes, we could wind up there again. I mean, you know, one thing that, and I forget that when I follow this every day, people, you know, not everybody does that, but President Obama was personally whipping for votes in the House on this vote. He was actually bringing fence-sitting Democrats into his office one at a time and saying, why aren't you voting for this? You need to vote for this bill. What can I do to sweeten the pot for you? That was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like that before. I mean, it was really remarkable. And I wouldn't hesitate to think that he would do it again. He's very committed to this. Now, the administration has told us that their top 3 priorities this year, despite what anybody else says, are healthcare, healthcare, and healthcare. So they're going to get that through. And I think you see that now. I mean, that's what they're clearly focused on, and that's what the Congress is clearly focused on. If that falls apart, and it may not, then we wind up with climate again. And they could find a way to make deals to get it through the Senate. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. I don't know. I really think they have a tough time getting to 60 votes. Senator Dorgan in North Dakota just came out pretty strongly against this. Senator Bayh, Senator Landrieu have come out strongly against it. I think if they took a vote today, they wouldn't get either senator in this state. Although I think Senator McCaskill, she's on the fence. I think she wants to do something, you know, to address, to move forward with cap and trade, but she just doesn't like the bill as it's written. So then, what happens if it fails? Right now, the goal is to get, Senator Boxer's going to get the bill through her committee, just the cap and trade part of it. She's going to introduce something the first week of September, get it through by the middle of September, and then she's going to punt it to the rest of the committees. It's such an enormous bill that if they really wanted to move it through just about every committee in the Senate, they could. I don't know that they will. Senator Reid's planning on having this thing floor ready by the end of September, early October. Whether or not he brings it to the floor depends on whether or not he can make the deals to get this thing done. I think it's very telling that Senator Boxer has not taken this up all on her own. I don't think, in a way, it's contrary to the way that she operates. I figured she'd be carrying the torch on this one, but the fact that she just wants to mark it up, her little piece of it, and then get it the heck out of there, I think says a lot about what she thinks the prospects of this bill are. So if something doesn't pass this year, where are we? We've got Copenhagen at the end of the year. It doesn't look positive there. That's extraordinarily frustrating, but everything we hear is that don't expect any miracles in Copenhagen, so maybe we'll see something, maybe we won't. And then really we're stuck with, you know, I don't know that they would really want to take something like this up that is very easy to call a national energy tax in an election year. So maybe they don't do something next year and we wind up with EPA acting. The early indications from EPA are that they will probably finalize the endangerment finding and issue vehicle standards rules probably around March of 2010. Around the beginning of the year, they'll probably get to work on new source performance standards for electric generating units. This is all conditional upon whatever happens with cap and trade. Okay, thanks. And then they're moving forward. So, you know, it's hard to really to tell the future on this thing, but it doesn't look good for this particular bill. I don't know how you tweak a 1,500-page bill and fix it, and that's really their problem right now. So.